read all about it. It's the Weekly Crumbs.
Hello everyone and welcome back to What a Barb, a Polin podcast. I'm Obs and today I am joined by it's the Bean.
It's Beans.
Welcome back. I mean, you were kind of in the... I can't keep track of whether you've been in or not. We'll get to that in a second. But Beans, I have summoned you here for a very important weekly crumb.
Yeah.
It's been a hot minute since the two of us have done a little weekly crumb, though.
It has been a hot minute. I've had a lot going on in my life.
You have, and you know what? The prayers have been answered. If Beans' audio sounds a bit dodgy, it's A, because we didn't intend to record an episode, but here we are nonetheless. And B, Beans, where are you, babe?
Okay, so let me just talk about it because I don't think I've talked about this a lot. So in the course of the past 3 to 4 months, starting in October, like last year was a difficult year for me in general, but those few months were very difficult. I had to move out of my previous apartment and find a new one. I also lost my job and had to get a new one.
Not because you did anything wrong. She wasn't fired.
So I had to do all of that. And I slept on a futon at my mom's for 3 months. And then I had a health issue that I'm not going to talk about. But I will say that I'm okay. There's no lasting effects.
She's alive and well.
And we good now. We gravy. But, it was a lot. And so right now I'm currently sitting in my new apartment. I did get a new job.
Oh, babe, you genuinely had it rough there for quite a significant period of time. And we're very proud of you. You got through it, my love.
Yeah, thank you. I mean, you guys were so helpful for me this entire time.
Aww.
So I'm just grateful for you guys constantly. I feel like I haven't given you guys as much as you guys have given me.
Don't be ridiculous. You're here alive and well, and that's all we could wish for, Beans, because if you were not here alive and well, who else would I have... Well, I mean, I could have summoned Lecky or Veg, but...
Sure could have.
I'm still glad it's you who's here alive and well.
I'm the one that volunteered.
Oh gosh, because the reason, I mean, great, Beans' life is back on track because we're here to talk about important things.
Yeah.
You aside, we have important matters at hand, haven't we, Beans?
We do.
Because on Tuesday, we're recording this, I don't know.
On Thursday.
I've had a week, I tell you, so I've lost track. We're recording this on Thursday. We'll get this out to you as soon as we possibly can. But on Tuesday, completely out of the blue, Bridgerton released a short season 4 behind-the-scenes promo video all over its socials. As is tradition, it was dropped at the most inconvenient time it possibly could have done within my working day. I was just staring helplessly at my phone in the distance as it just exploded. And I had messages from people being like, "Married Penelope, have you guys seen this?" And I was like, no. Beans, I thought let's get you on for a little weekly crumb. Let's resurrect them. We'll have a little chat about the video. And then, of course, it's to doom time, baby.
Oh, yeah.
So we're not going to go super in depth because we're going to kind of keep this short and sweet, famous last words.
Because I do have other things to get to. i.e. moving into an apartment.
Okay, let's start then with the video. Let's break down what we have because this really is our first official look at season 4. And I say official because, as many of you will know, there have been a couple of filming leaks, not actually that many this time around, but there's been 1 or 2, which I think we covered some in our last weekly crumb, What a Runaway Made. If you remember that, with little Zorro Ben, a little masquerade. There's also been a couple that we'll touch on with Fran and John and Elle and Footman John. So just beware that spoilers might pop up here and there. Although weirdly, we'll talk about filming spoilers, but we won't talk about that many benophie spoilers because we're still trying to keep you as pure as we possibly can. So what we'll say is, although we might be discussing filming leaks, still take them with a massive pinch of salt because you can never take a filming leak completely as it appears. There's so many different ways to interpret them. I mean, we know this as much as anyone, don't we, Beans?
Yeah. Actually, I will say that I have had some very out there guesses, but at the same time, I've been pretty accurate about some of them.
Some of them less so.
Oh, yeah.
So I think there's a lot that we don't know. So hopefully the event that's coming up in February will reveal a lot more. But let's start with this video.
Yeah.
So we have a few members of the cast on set and amazingly in costume, hanging around out of character. Seems like they're having a great time. So we have Hannah Dodd and Claudia Jessie, of course, the wonderful Francesca and Eloise, Rangers, house, which is, of course, the Bridgerton house.
Yep.
Fran is dressed in a blue dress with a pelisse. It's sort of like almost a quilted pelisse with like floral stitching over. It's that sort of married look of the Tons ladies. Obviously, she is now with John. Interestingly, John Glazer talked about how in season 3, they often dressed her in these really interesting, almost translucent fabrics because there was something impenetrable and mysterious and a bit unknown about her. I'm interested in how her look is going to change in season 4 now that we know her a little bit more, but now she's going on this different journey and now she's married.
Me too.
Claudia Jessie was also on set wrapped up in her coat, but I think you can kind of see Eloise's muff making a return appearance. Hopefully not a muff of betrayal this time, but she's back to Eloise's trademark mint green.
Yeah.
And Bridgerton House kind of looks normal, which is notable this time around. In this little clip, it doesn't seem like there are overt signs of autumn. There's white blossoms on the trees. It's all kind of feeling very springtime in the ton, which we'd expect for normal seasons, but we're pretty sure at least part of this season is going to be set in autumn or the fall for you Americans out there. So it seems like we're starting in the spring, perhaps.
Excuse me, I know what autumn is. That just hit me. Oh, you know what? Very, very, very quick tangent. When I was listening to this episode, I was disappointed that you guys did not call me and ask me to do the Polin section when you were talking about the dream sequence, because I think that I would have been a wonderful voice to hear.
That is a shame, I admit. Now, fortunately, we do have all of your renditions of Pen and Colin from our book reread.
My wonderful interpretations.
You know, I think I'm still sort of reeling from the Dickens Penelope that we were so au fait with last year.
Oh, yeah.
I think your spirit is always with us, Beans.
Yeah.
And we also didn't want to go pick you off of whatever floor you'd collapse onto to force a recording out of you. But you will be returning to the pod. Well, I mean, you're here now, but you know what I mean.
Yes. And a more regular occurrence.
So we'll get back in a second as to what Elle and Fran could be doing at Ranger's house / Bridgerton house. But who else do we see? Well, Yerin Ha appears in costume, the wonderful Sophie.
Yes.
With an actress by her side who's also dressed in a very similar costuming. Now, I've seen fans speculate that this is an actress called Gracie McGonagall. This hasn't been officially confirmed, but it does kind of look like that's who it could be. We don't have a name of a character or anything like that. West End fans, you might know Gracie from The Little Big Things at Soho Place, and she's been in a few other things. So incredibly talented person. Would love for her to be in the season. And they appear to be on set in what looks like it could be a servant's entrance or a house or a stables, definitely like the back of a house somewhere. And as we say, they're both in maid's costuming. So this is the first time we're seeing Sophie as a maid. Beans, you know this is significant. You've got those pieces of the puzzle.
Maybe.
But Sophie's a maid. Come on, you know that much at least.
Yes.
She does know one or two pieces.
Yeah.
One thing I'll say, I like that she seems to have like a little maid friend. How sweet would that be? Because obviously this season will be taking place, or it'll be exploring different parts of the ton. So we're so used to seeing the noble families in the ton.
Yeah.
And the servants have sort of always been in the background. Whereas because that is Sophie's world, we'll see a little bit more of that. And I hope that she needs a confidant, right? Every character needs a confidant to speak to or to challenge them in some way. So I'm hoping she has a friend.
Right.
And then the costuming itself, it's kind of hard to see in the clip because it looks like evening and it's not particularly bright. And on first look, it kind of seems like the maid's outfit could be black or like very, very dark. But I think if you actually squint a lot, I think it could be purple.
It could be.
Or some sort of variation. And which maids wear purple?
The Queen.
Babe, no. Come on.
The Bridgerton?
Yeah.
Ooh, I've been out of it.
She's getting there. But it does kind of look like a different style to the Bridgerton maids that we've seen in the past. So is she working for the Bridgertons? Is she working for certain members of the Bridgertons and not others? But yeah, who is Sophie working for Beans? Have you got any ideas? At one point we theorised if she would end up working for Alice, because she starts off working for someone and then she ends up changing households.
Oh.
But the show could change that.
That's true. Have we seen like the Montriches?
Yeah, they wear like teal. So if you remember at the floral ball in episode 6, that was at the Montriches. It's definitely more of a Bridgerton tone is the purple, if that's what she's wearing. But it could be an updated version, or it could be a certain part of the family that she's working for. And last time we spoke about Sophie, we were talking about Sophie's potential costuming. And I think you can see here that her maid's outfit has quite a beautiful simplicity to it. Because, I mean, it is a maid ultimately, but then it's also this interesting dynamic that she's a maid and therefore has this sort of simple dress that is designed to blend in to society. They're designed to go past unnoticed and to sort of not be the focal point in the world. They're the servants. Whereas what you have in season 4 is she is the main story. So it's that interesting contrast of how you normally have this character in the background, but she is the focus, and how you sort of play with that. And then I think as well that we know we're going to see her as the Lady in Silver. We've already seen the little spoilers of the masquerade of Benedict meeting Sophie. And I think it's important that they have this real contrast in the costuming, that Benedict can't recognise her because they're so different in how they dress and how maybe she sort of holds herself and how much she reveals of herself. And if she's sort of very held back as a maid, because again, that's sort of their position in society. And then that's one of the reasons that you have her intricate, very traditional Tons dress when she's in her Lady in Silver outfit versus this real simplicity of the rest of her costuming. But it's going to be interesting as the season goes on to see how her personality can then be expressed through her costuming still, because you want that individuality to shine through. Because if you can see, she has her hair in this shot like really tightly pulled back very neatly into a bun. And it reminds me a little bit, although functioning differently, as how Kate was in season 2. Because if you remember in season 2, her hair was very pulled back. It was very tidy because she had her guard up. She wouldn't let Anthony in. And then as the season went on, her hair sort of became wispier. Parts were falling down until you had at the end in episode 8, her braid around her, which is similar to how we see Yerin later on in this clip have a braid down. And obviously they're working very differently because Kate was still a member of society and her hair more represented her emotional guard with Anthony, whereas with Sophie it would be sort of her role as a maid and then her individuality and her personality, and her guard again similarly falling down. People have been looking at the styling that we've seen in these couple of clips, and there's not loads to go on, but people have wondered whether the simplicity we see in Sophie's costuming and styling will shape how the rest of the costuming and styling goes. I mean, we spoke to Erica, who was the hair and makeup designer for season 3, and she specifically said that when they were designing Penelope's look DNA for season 3, they focused on this idea of like a timeless Hollywood starlet, and then because that was going to be Penelope's look, they needed to elevate everyone else to sort of create that so that it didn't feel anachronistic. So it was around that Featherington Bridgerton story. Do you think we'll see something similar with the styling where the world then sort of represents Benophie's story?
Yeah, I think Bridgerton has a really good way of making sure that things, even if they're sort of outlandish, are cohesive, right? So like you said, the styling, what they'll probably do, what I'm hoping that they'll do, because, okay, actually, if I'm thinking about it, the styling has been fairly simple. Like if we look at Penn's dress and stuff, it has been more simplified, which I feel like would play into that kind of Sophie as a maid. It's going to have a more simple outfit so the people around her can't like outshine her, because we have to know that she's still the lead. So like their outfits are like a little bit more simple or whatever. I mean, and then there's Cressida, who will always have the most insane outfit at any given moment in time.
If she's in season 4, I suppose.
Yeah, if she's in season 4. So maybe as that evolves, I am hoping, and I think maybe I've mentioned this before, so I'm hoping that they really play up some of like the Korean traditional gowns when Sophie sort of comes into society more. And those can be so like beautiful, simple. So it will be interesting to see. I do think they're going to develop it more as her character is given like different freedoms and stuff. So,
and then I suppose the other thing with costuming is if the season does cross over different periods of the year, then that could also be reflected in the costuming. So if we start out in the spring,
that's also very true.
And then we move into a colder season, that will need to be reflected. So we have Sophie in costume. We'll come back to her soon, because we're whipping back to Ollie Higginson, aka Footman John, and Victor Ali, aka Fran John.
Oh my god, yes.
At the door of Bridgerton House. I'm officially obsessed with John Squared. The duo I didn't know I needed in my life, but how good to see them together.
Oh my gosh. I hope that Footman John gets, because he had a couple of lines that were cut from last season. I hope that he gets some more this season. That would be so fun.
Well, it would make sense though, because do you remember that very originally when they were thinking about the show, they were going to have a little bit more of an upstairs-downstairs dynamic where they originally planned to spend more time with the servants, and then as the show was formulated, that's not how it ended up being. And this is the season where you could really go back into that, because we need to be in Sophie's world. We need to see the Ton from their perspective. And so it would make far more sense if, and I don't just mean that we literally see Sophie interacting with other people of her station. I also think, do you know how I was saying about how the tone of the season and the themes of the season can really represent the main love story, as well as Sophie's story? We get a little bit more insight into the lives of the other maids and the other servants and the footmen. And so that world feels a little bit bigger and deeper than what we'd normally have.
Yeah.
Now, when it comes to Footman John in particular, though, little spoiler alert for some filming leaks. Beans, do you remember a couple of months ago, there were some filming leaks of what looks to be, and again, the interpretation could be off, but it looks to be this Scottish contingent returning home.
Oh, yes.
It was definitely Francesca, John and Eloise. Not sure that Michaela was spotted, so I'm not sure if she's going to be left up in Scotland, if she's going to wander off, if she's going to return.
I wonder if it's going to be a Philip situation. Like, she shows up and then we see her for a couple of seconds or a couple of minutes and then this next season. And then we don't hear about her again until the Fran season comes up. It is a wonder if Philip will show up.
Well, there is some tree lore happening in this episode, potentially. We'll get to in a second. The timeline is still a little bit up in the air, because the filming leaks that these seem to be from is like the same set that they're at in this little clip. And it does seem to be springtime. And do you know how the season always opens with like an action moment of a Bridgerton doing something? So it always reminds me of, you know, Colin returning home in the carriage, that sort of propelling the story, launching it, or the sisters debuting, or you had Daphne returning back to Bridgerton House at the beginning of season 2 to sort of hand the season over. Because there are no Bridgertons debuting this season, I wonder if like the action of episode 1, like that opening sequence, will be the Scottish group coming back into the Ton, and like that's the energy, because I think you can see in a clip Footman John dashing down the steps and welcoming them back. Because Eloise promised she was going to be back for the masquerade, right?
Yeah.
So we have Elle returning back to the Ton, seeing Pen, all those interactions happening. But it does beg the question of how much Michaela we're going to see. I'll come back to that in just a second. Because we have other clips of Claudia, Luke and Ruth at Hampton Court Palace, which is a location they filmed at a number of times, including Anthony and Rena's wedding. Interestingly, you can see Benedict's costuming here a little bit. So he's wearing sort of a baby blue long jacket. He has slightly darker blue trousers and boots on.
The baby blue.
I have to say, I appreciate his coordinating gloves with his boots. Much appreciated. But it's very interesting to see his styling. And like you say, baby blue. So we've been used to associating baby blue with Colin in season 2 as a way to sort of infantilize him, or really show that he wasn't quite a man yet, and he was sort of in a bit of a period of transition and growth, and it wasn't quite his season. I don't know. I don't know if that's being used in the same way for Ben. I don't know that the light blue is necessarily infantilizing him in that same way.
Yeah. Because I'm thinking about Ben's costumes, right? And so his costumes have always, like, he's never been very flashy, I would say, with the costuming choices.
He's had a few yellows here and there. With Benedict, it's always been like the dashes of style. So he's always tied his cravat differently. Always had like these tiny embellishments, like his bees that he always wears.
Right.
When we're looking at this scene though, it again seems like springtime because all the trees are in blossom. So is this like his very early episode styling? And again, it's like, what journey is he going to go on throughout the season, especially if there's a time jump? I know that I'd really love to see Benedict costuming become like very artistic, and I don't mean that in an overly flamboyant way. I just think because that's such a core part of him, and how fun that could be to be expressed through his costuming as he's taking centre stage.
Right.
Although his jacket was doing my head in, because I was like, he looks so familiar, and it's very similar to it's not very similar, but it's a similar palette to his hunting jacket in 204. So it's not like a million miles away from what we've seen him in before. It is interesting to sort of see if there is a time jump, if he starts one way and then he goes a different way after he's met Sophie, or like whether that's a gradual process that we don't really see until it unfolds in later episodes. As for the other two, Eloise and Violet are looking lovely as always. So Eloise has got a blue dress. The patterns are harder to make out. It's sort of vaguely florally, or planty at least. And then Violet is with them, which you can't really make out too much about what's going on in the scene, but it definitely looks like it's more of a promenade. There's other people walking. There's people sort of casually going by on horseback. look. So I think it's a promenade. And then is it a promenade with the whole family? Is it a promenade just the three of them? As we say, it's still springtime, so is that still very early on in the story, the first few episodes?
We shall see. I have no clue.
And then we have another shot of Yerin with a very cute dog. She has a dressing gown on, so it's kind of harder to see her costuming, but it looks like it's sort of a lighter coloured dress, like a very pale blue or silver or some sort of cream. They're outside, so I'm not sure about the location, but it definitely looks a little bit more casual, a little bit more personal and undone than sort of that very tight maid's outfitting that she's wearing. Oh, and then jumping ahead a little bit, towards the end of the clip, we have our very first look at Isabella Way, who would be playing Posy Li. It's raining in the clip and she's twirling her umbrella and she's covered up in a coat, so you can't really see too much of her outfit. But you can see a little glimpse of a light pink collar, and her hair is beautifully braided and it has these little pink embellishments embedded within it as well. Also, Lecky and I did some hedge analysis, a little throwback there for you, and it really does look like this tiny clip of Isabella is actually at Hampton Court Palace as well, so maybe taken on the same day as that clip of Luke Thompson, Ruth Gemmell and Claudia Jessie. Maybe a little running on the promenade perhaps. So I'm really hoping that as part of this first glimpse that I assume we're going to get at the Seasons of Love event, that we will see the Gunn and Lee family on screen, even if it's just a still. I think they did something really similar when they were very first laying the ground for season 2 promo.
Right.
To sort of acquaint us with this new family who've arrived in the town, sort of get them a little bit more familiar to us on our screens. So fingers crossed, I'm hoping that we see a little bit more of the new family, including lovely Posy. Beans, I think you'll love Posy. But then, of course, Beans, we have Penelope's on site.
Yeah.
There they are. Our first sight of Penelope in season 4. It kind of looks like they're outside shopping together on the new set that they've built. So for season 4, they've built a lot of the sets instead of going out on location. We've seen glimpses of sort of market streets that they can go and film on. But it is so good to see Penelope's back together again, shopping like the olden days, except they're now sisters. First things first that draw my attention, that giant, massive, I mean, synonyms, but that giant mint green bow on Eloise's neck.
Yeah.
What do you make of it? Is that like her sign to the world again? Like, men do not come near me. I am not on the marriage mat.
Oh my gosh, true. Or it could just be, like Penelope had all of those bows in the second season and it was so horrendous. They're like the bows of sadness, or I don't know. I'm wondering if that's a hint to it being Eloise's season after this one, because it's like
the contrast.
She has that big bow. Yeah. And they always make the next Bridgerton in line like have a terrible season or terrible fashion or something. I think that we'll see. It's definitely a choice. But Eloise also had quite a few neck choices, décolletage, in the previous season as well, if we're being honest.
And that's interesting, though, because in season 3, she was like firmly out of the game. Violet didn't push her in any way. She was in a different headspace. She kind of said like the only way to win the game is to join the winning side or whatever. But like we didn't see her at any point engaging courting. And they didn't include the scene with Theo. So we didn't even see that storyline play out. It was all about friendship and her relationships with her family. It's like, what is her storyline going to be? And we'll talk about this so much more another time, I know. But is Violet going to push her to get back on the marriage mark? Like, you've had a year out, get back into it now.
Interesting.
She's sort of having the contrast of her best friend is married with a kid.
Yeah.
And Fran, who I assume will be quite a close sibling again. Fran is married. Anthony's married. It's once again all those pieces falling where she feels a little bit disconnected from the stage of life that everyone else is at around her.
I think Violet is not going to be super pushy, but she is going to suggest like, oh, you've had time off. I've given you this time. You had all those things happen last year.
Yeah, you've made amends with Penn. You've been away. You've come back with a clearer head, maybe.
Do you think that it's time or something? Or I wonder if Violet will offhandedly talk to Penn, like, because Penn will be around now. So Violet will be like, oh, Penn, like, can you tell Eloise that it's her time or whatever? but very lighthearted. I feel like Violet is, as we've seen in previous seasons, like she'll make comments, but she isn't pushy.
Yeah, she isn't going to force them to marry. She does want them to marry for love, and she can be quite enthusiastic about that, but Elle still has a choice ultimately.
She'll just be like, oh, but here's this thing, perhaps you do this. And she definitely will back off as soon as she can sense her kids are unhappy.
I think the only time she was really pushy with Elle really badly was at the Hearts and Flowers ball in 204, and that went really badly.
Yeah.
And after that, she definitely sort of was like, I don't want you to be anybody but yourself. Your own time, your own pace. But like you say, having seen Pen be so happy, married with one of her sons, is Violet going to have that tendency to be like, I just want all my children to be happy and in love. And I want that for you too. It's what that tension's going to be, because she was allowed to sort of not have to be in that world last year.
Right.
You know that in the books, Eloise was proposed to like 5 times, and she just kept turning them down every time.
Interesting.
Before her own sort of love story took place. So it is an interesting season for Elle, because it's the season before we assume she'll take the lead in season 5, which hasn't been confirmed. Anthony had a really interesting season before his. I think Colin had an interesting season before his. Benedict's was also interesting, but I think in a very different way than we thought. I think we thought he was going to get really burned, and then he kind of didn't. That wasn't the sort of conclusion that he came to. The conclusion was like, I'm having a great time in my life.
Yeah.
But still adrift, still completely adrift.
I know. We're going to talk about it more, I think, in our rewatches and stuff. Just my own personal opinions about Benedict's journey into his season, but I digress.
Well, back to Eloise, because her dress, I might sound crazy, looks like the bark of a tree.
It's given oak, baby. It's given oak.
Can you see what I mean? It looks like a tree.
It really does.
Now that you've had time to appreciate the depth of the bark, what are your conclusions, Beans? Our listeners will know from our recent episode that you're very passionate about trees. That is a barky tree. Come on, she's going to marry Sir Philip. Do 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 do.
My thoughts are, and we've talked about it previously, is I think that she's going to have some event that happens in this next season, season 4, where she starts to write to him maybe mid-season till the end of the season. She's going to start to have a correspondence with Philip, is my guess.
Do I think they're going to meet in season 4? I'm not sure. Or there'll be the inciting incident like Marina's death. But I think we all know she's on the path to Sir Philip. But Eloise aside, bark dress aside, Penelope, there she is. Our first look at her season 4 costuming. It's sort of a light cream embroidered dress. Is it slightly golden? Is there a very, very, very slight blush tone almost?
It is. When I initially looked at it, I thought creamy yellow gold back to her roots, which is shocking.
Like a very, very light version of that. But she is co-head of the Featherington household these days, I suppose.
I know.
It's sort of like a combination, because it has like the slight tone of a Featherington dress with that sort of delicacy and sort of refinement of
the Bridgertons, yes.
But it's definitely not like the blues. It's definitely not those sage greens that she was wearing so consistently throughout season 3. So is it a case that this is going to be her colour palette for the season?
Maybe.
Much, much lighter. Kind of how like Kate had that lighter dress, but that was for the presentation.
No.
I don't know that this is for the presentation, because why would they just be walking by the shops on presentation day?
Right. I do hope that they dive into more of those sage greens and blues. I think she looked beautiful in them.
Yeah, it's like the perfect marriage of the households. It's interesting to know how they're going to take Pen's costuming, I think, because, I mean, she seems to be wearing like a police, like the overcoat as well, because she's a married woman now and she's a mama, and it's sort of that next step of her life, which is so interesting then when you contrast that against Eloise.
That is true, but she is still young.
She's still very young. She's, barely 20? And so I agree. It's why I was always on the side of like, oh, I don't want them to have kids straight away. They do get married really young, and I wanted them to have like a little bit of time together before they had the kid. But the son was always going to be born. That was always on the cards with the Featherington subplot. It is going to be interesting to see her sort of step into this self-assured married woman. She's exposed as Whistledown, so having that more commanding presence, sort of being respected for her work openly, maybe having conflict, how far that goes. Yeah, it's so interesting to see see married Pen, and with her hair swept up into that updo, she's got curls falling down. And I just love seeing Pen and Eloise together. In the books, Eloise felt very pushed out by Pen and Colin being together. She sort of realised there wasn't space for her, or she felt that way, and so that's what incited her to go off and begin her story. But I think that having the timeline shaken up by sort of Ben and Colin swapping places, I wonder how it's going to sit with Pen, where she's a bit more comfortable with Pen and Colin and their dynamic, and sort of doesn't feel as third wheelie, but maybe as the season goes on and she feels Ben pull away as well, she starts to feel a little bit more of the isolation. And then at the end, it is Benedict getting married that makes her realise that she is being left behind.
Can I tell you my further thoughts about this? I think for sure that Pen is going to be an influence on Eloise to realize that marriage does not have to be this constricting thing, because
she still has her career and be a mother and be happily married. I don't know if they're going to have conflicts, because it's sort of a weird one, because normally the happily married couple don't then go on to have massive conflicts, but it is whistled down. It is the example of you can have everything you want and be happy and fulfilled and be creative, intellectual and intellectually stimulated in the world.
Right.
And then very lastly, we have Yirin on location, which appears to be outside some sort of stately home, or at least someone's home. Her hair is braided and down around her shoulder, which is far more informal. And you can't see her costuming, you can just see sort of a delicate necklace. But Beans, any ideas?
Well, because it's a little bit more informal, I wonder if she's been visited in her servants' quarters by Ben or something like that.
Good guess. I suppose the Bridgerton boys do like slipping out at night, don't they?
Yeah.
Oh, babe, I wish so much I could tell you some book 3 spoilers. Are you definitely feeling that sort of intimacy in terms of, I don't mean necessarily physical intimacy, I mean the emotional intimacy with her hair being down and braided?
Let's just talk a little bit about like Korean hairstyling and stuff. Typically younger women used to have their hair in braids and braided down like that, especially women who are not royalty. However, when a woman gets older, they typically will have it braided and then have the braid curved up in a bun. And so when a woman has her hair in Korea specifically braided like that and down, and in shows, they'll show you like it's a little bit looser around the face and not so tight, which is what it looks like with Yerin right here. It's definitely like an intimate, like she was by herself, or Ben's bringing her out when she's not expecting him to be there.
That's so interesting. And seeing her here at night out in the gardens with her hair loosely down is such a contrast to that very orderly, tight, uniformed hairstyle that she had in her maid's outfit. She is maybe having a moment in her own thoughts, and then someone else enters the picture. They're able to have an emotionally charged or emotionally vulnerable moment. It's going to be really interesting to see benophie in these liminal spaces, like a garden at night, because it's going to be a lot about the boundaries of society and the constraints and stations. And I think what you need is like those moments at the masquerade where for a moment all of that falls away and then it's just two of them. And it's how many times this season can you have those moments before that tension rushes back in and sort of pulls against them again.
Yeah.
And there we go. That's the video. It's so great to have a glimpse at the season, to see what everyone's up to, just to know that it's actually coming is really exciting. Now, Beans, a little while ago, I sat you down and I asked your thoughts on the direction that you maybe hoped or predicted that each character could go in for season 4. It's a topic we'll come back to way more as we learn information about the actual season. But just to touch back on you now and to see where your thoughts are at after this video, I thought we'd go through one or two of the characters and see what you're thinking in general. So Benedict, you've always loved Ben. I guess we have an idea about how his story could play out, or at least who his story's with and the beats of the book and everything like that. We've talked before about how we'll hope he'll return to his art. But as someone who's always really held a lot of affection for Ben, I guess I'm interested to know what you're hoping this journey will do for Ben in season 4. So if there's something that you want to see him challenged in a certain way, or a certain way you wanted him to grow, like if we considered the same for Polin in season 3, we wanted Colin to finally feel like he was on solid ground, like he felt that he was enough, and we wanted Pen to sort of step into her light and to unite herself with Lady Whistledown? Is there a sort of very core, simple part of Ben that you're excited to just see him grow in?
Oh gosh, okay. This is going to sound crazy, but I kind of want Ben to suffer a little bit more in his season.
I'm sure he will.
Yeah, I feel like he's like floated by, and yeah, he's had periods in his life where he's really struggled with his self-identity and how he fits into things, much like Colin himself, but it's a little bit different. Like, well, no, not really. Like they've both had similar like artistic struggles, right? And so I think that with that being said, Ben, though, has sort of floated by and kind of not ever taken anything too seriously. I would say even his art.
Yeah.
Like, yes, he struggles. Yes, he has a hard time. Yes, he wants to prove himself. But he also gives up easily. Like, he stopped going to the university because he found out his brother helped him. And I feel like Ben needs sort of this reality check that you can defy expectations or you can defy like the way that people see you. You know, you come from this great background, but you've been given community, you've been given help. So what can you do and how are you going to thrive going forward and make that art into something? So that's what I really want for Ben, is for him to struggle and then defy those odds.
To not feel burdened by his name and just being another sibling.
Exactly.
I think that's so interesting because it really reminds me of, I think, season 2, was it? When he was sat with Eloise on the swings and she says to him, "What do you know of heartbreak?" And he says, "Nothing, I guess." And I think that ties so much into it, is that he needs that heartbreak to fight.
Yeah, and he also needs that challenge of people persevere no matter what. Why are you giving up so easily? And do you realize you have the luxury to give up? Not everybody has that luxury. Not everybody can just sidestep their dreams because they're upset that their brother is helping them pay for school. I think Eloise had to do it, which is confronting her privilege. And I think Ben really has to go through that as well. And so that's a big thing.
Sophie, now I know you know bits and pieces about Sophie and you haven't read her story fully. So without knowing too much, is there something, she's a new character, is there something you're hoping she brings to the show?
You know, I loved the concept of doing like upstairs, downstairs stuff. And I hope that with this season, Sophie brings to light more of these characters and these people that are, this is so serious, but these people that are pivotal to the functions of rich society, right? Like people who live in these like rich, really elite groups of society have so much care and community around them and have people who take care of their like needs and everything. And I think our podcast kind of talks about the people behind the scenes with the showcasing the show itself, right? And I think the show would benefit from doing the same thing. Like, look, these are people in our lives that help us, and this is what they do, and this is why they're instrumental, and this is why we can't like look past them, because they have lives, they have wants, they have dreams, they have needs. They just don't have the status in society.
Pen and Colin, we've talked about quite a lot, and I'm sure we'll talk about a lot more as well. I think it's going to be interesting to see how their love story is sort of a contrast to Ben, and seeing his younger brother in a very happy marriage, settled down, having a successful artistic career, that really being a moment for Ben, maybe in the very early episodes, to be like, what am I doing with life? What do I want from life and where am I going? Other characters, now we know that Finch might come back. Not confirmed, but a photo shared from set a few months ago seemed to show he might be there. Earlier this week, James Foon was a guest on Gabby Roslin's radio show where he was asked if he was going to return. He couldn't say either way, but he's open to it.
I would love to see him.
We love that expanded world. Unfortunately, we do know that Phoebe Dynevor will most likely not be returning for season 4, as you know. And happy news, we know that Jonathan Bailey and Simone Ashley are definitely returning, so Camden will be back. Again, we don't know how much they'll be in the season. They both have very busy schedules, but Jonathan Bailey has always said that he's going to be there the whole way, supporting the younger siblings. There is one thing which we definitely don't have time to get into too much. I've mentioned it with Lecky in past Crumbs, but Jonathan Bailey said something so interesting about Anthony in season 4. He was talking about how he enjoyed his season 1 arc and the relationship with duty and power that he wielded over Daphne and his family, the isolation he felt, the anger that ensues because of the passing of his father. And then when he was talking about season 4, he said, what's brilliant is to see how there are elements of yourself you can't grow out of.
Oh.
So maybe we'll see hints of Anthony from season 1.
Interesting.
Isn't that like, and I can't get that out of my head. Now that might mean nothing. it might be like the tiniest little moment.
I don't think it means nothing. So here's the thing. It doesn't necessarily have to apply to Ben, does it? It can apply to his sisters. It can apply especially to Eloise.
Mm-hmm.
If we're thinking about Eloise as a character and potentially going into the marriage mark, being the next lead for the next season, it would be so interesting if her and Anthony had a relationship, because Anthony doesn't understand Eloise. He doesn't understand why she does the things that she does, why she picks this lifestyle that she wants to have. And so it would be incredibly fun and really interesting to see this sort of like sternness with Anthony, because he just doesn't understand.
I think they're quite similar in some ways. Johnny Bailey himself has said that before, that with both of those characters, their issues with love is very psychological. It's sort of fighting against themselves every step of the way.
Yeah.
Like how Anthony was so against falling in love. Eloise has put herself in the same situation. Maybe the idea about duty might, because if Anthony's only in it very slightly, then I suppose his moments have to sort of be carefully curated, is if Benedict is still taking the role as sort of the regent.
Oh, yeah.
And he's leading the family. And if Anthony kind of gets a little bit hyper-focused on that, or is sort of challenging Ben and being like, what are you doing? Or what are you doing in your life? Are you focusing on this? Are you running the estate while I'm going off to India? Is he going to go back to India? I don't know.
I like that idea too. So I do think that like it would be interesting to see him interacting with Eloise, especially if it's going to come to her next season, because he did it so much with Phoebe. Or not Phoebe. Daphne. Oh, God. But yeah, I would also think if Benedict falls so in love with Sophie and he's losing his mind, because we know Bridgerton men love to do that, I wonder if he would start to let those things fall by the wayside to the point where Anthony comes back and he's like, what the fuck is going on?
Why are you just doodling little pictures of your woman in silver everywhere instead of actually signing on the dotted line? That would be good. If he kind of bobs in and out and he sees the decay of the Bridgerton estate because Benedict's in love.
Yeah.
Very quickly, moving on, we've talked about Fran, John and Michaela a bit. I think what I'm most interested to see in season 4, I don't think John's going to die yet.
No.
I would really like to see the kind of love that Fran and John end up having. And I don't necessarily mean that in a sexual manner either, but the love has to be there for us to feel the impact of John's death.
Yeah, I want to see the chemistry that they have outside of just having sex.
Yeah, and you can have the contrast to the chemistry that Fran will have with Michaela or might have with Michaela, but I think it's important that we really start to develop those relationships. John and Michaela, we need to see their bond. Maybe Francesca's struggling with how she feels about John throughout the season, and then by the time he's ready to die, she really, maybe by the time she's really struggled with her feelings, and then she's at sort of peace with how all their dynamics work, and then he's taken away from her. There's a lot of different directions that they could take that story in, but what I hope it ends up being is this beautiful story of different types, different forms of love impacted by loss and how love navigates through that. And yeah, that's kind of it. Like you're saying, the world of the servants is going to be interesting. In the past, the servants have always been in the background and the camera has always followed the townspeople. And now we're going to be following the servants who've always been in the background. And it won't be long before we get more information, because beans, another day, another to-dum. Off we go. Along with the season 4 video, it was announced that there will be another virtual fan event held on Valentine's Day to celebrate season 4 and truly kick things off for benophie. We've walked down this road many a time, babe, haven't we?
We have.
But the invitation to the event is: the most passionate time of year is upon us, gentle reader, the Bridgerton season of love. Welcome to a month-long celebration of all forms of love, from romance, friendship and self-love to the burning ardour of being a Bridgerton fan. This is the time to toast them all. This season of love will come with gifts for loyal fans, but there is one very special event that will bring the entire ton together. On February the 14th, Bridgerton will hold its 2025 virtual fan celebration, giving viewers around the world an exclusive sneak peek at season 4. Queen Charlotte herself, Golda Rochevelle, will host a panel which will be graced by Thompson and Haar, along with showrunner Jess Brownell, offering the audience a tantalising glimpse at Bridgerton's next great love story.
Ooh.
So it's going to take place in London, but it's going to stream across the world so everyone can join in and watch. And we have been told to expect never before seen peeks at what's to come in season 4, along with more announcements and surprises.
Amazing.
Babe, do you even have another to-dum in you?
I mean, I'm always excited when they come. No, let me. I was excited when they come out. Now I pace myself because, like, I know it's just kind of like they give you bits and pieces, and sometimes they give you nothing, like nothing at all.
Oh, babe, ain't that the truth? Well, let's recap, shall we? I know that a lot of our listeners only joined the fandom sort of within the last year or so, and so maybe haven't sort of experienced how the promo cycles work a little bit. And if you're wondering why we call this To-Dum, it's basically since 2020, Netflix have held fan events under the name of To-Dum to celebrate and promote upcoming releases. So To-Dum has taken different forms over the years. So it was virtual for a while because of COVID, and then it became this huge in-person event in Brazil in 2023. And we've had a long history with this because Netflix usually uses these big fan events to promote the show in particular.
Yeah.
So to help us guess at what was going to happen on Valentine's Day, I thought let's quickly recap the past dums and the past fan events to see what happened there and what information we got. We've been to a few of them and they've been a journey. So September 2021, Nicola Coughlan hosted an interview panel with Jonathan Bailey, Simone Ashley and Taritha Chandran to discuss season 2. So as part of this, there were a number of stills and a clip of the Cantonese confrontation at Lady Danbury's ball. And then as a reminder, season 2 itself was then released in March of the next year, September 2022. This is the infamous To-Dum. This was the first one to promote season 3. So filming had only just started, so there were no stills or clips or behind the scenes of any kind released. There was sort of a couple of skits released of Nicola, Luke and Claudia doing like games together. And there was also Luke and Claudia answering a couple of questions about their characters, but they didn't give too much away. And then we had Nicola reading the opening few lines of Lady Whistledown from 301. And then there was also Queen Charlotte promo. So that was a very low key To-Dum after expectations were very high. On Valentine's Day 2023 was the very first Valentine's Day event, and that was for Queen Charlotte. So that featured an interview panel with a number of cast members and Shonda Rhimes, and they released about 3 clips, and I think there might have been a still or 2 released around the same time. And then the show itself was released in May 2023. That brings us to June 2023. Are you keeping up, Beans?
Yeah.
This is how it goes, guys. June 2023 was To-Dum in Brazil in person. So Nicola travelled there and we were expecting clips galore. But what we got, she sort of revealed a little bit more of an extended synopsis for season 3. So revealing a couple bits of pieces of information. And then there were 4 stills released from the early episodes. So it was Colin returning home, penned by her window, Mark at Polin that ended up being cut from the season altogether, and Colin and Penn just before their first kiss. So that was June 2023. The show didn't come out because it was supposed to be released on 14th of December 2023, wasn't it, Beans? And the strikes delayed the release, and it also delayed production because season 4 filming was supposed to begin in September 2023, and that ended up being delayed by a whole year because of the delayed release and because of the strikes and everything. So season 3 is a bit of an anomaly, because then finally on Valentine's Day 2024 there was a full cast interview panel featuring new stills. There was the Goodnight Mr. Bridgerton clip, and then the show finally released a couple of months later in May 2024. So it looks like they're continuing the Valentine's Day tradition, and it seems like this might be something we can look forward to going forward every year, or at least every season. So there's a little bit of an overview about what we can expect. They're a bit further along into filming season 4, so I wonder if they'll have a clip edited.
Yeah, we'll definitely get stills.
I'm hoping the masquerade, because that's already kind of been leaked, so it's not really giving us that much more.
Yeah, I'm very sure that the 14th we will probably just get stills. Or a still, if that.
They're still deep in production.
Yeah, they'll slowly leak things, and then one day you'll get all of the stills at once and all of these clips and everything. Yeah.
All the plot spoilers at once.
Yeah.
And then the cast interview panel, that'll be really interesting because they always delve into the story, delve into the characters, and then we might even get a little bit of nuggets about new characters or other storylines from Jess Brownell. I think that the interesting bit as well is surprises and announcements. What could that be?
Well,
so possibly cast announcements?
Oh, perhaps cast announcements for sure. You know what? And maybe they'll be like, oh, this is the title of episode 1 or something.
Babe, what about a season 5 renewal announcement?
Maybe.
Now, I'm not saying by any stretch that they'd be like, and it's Eloise and Philip.
Right. No, they wouldn't do that.
Because in the past, they announced season 3 and 4 together.
Yeah, probably. We did talk about how they built a whole set for Bridgerton. So I don't think they would have done that if they weren't going to renew it for...
It's an investment in the show.
Yeah, exactly. So that could definitely be the announcement that they're going to say. I wouldn't be surprised.
Because I think people are waiting for it, because realistically, once filming finishes, it won't be too long before they go into pre-production for the next season. So it needs to be announced at some point. So that's a bit of a wild guess. I have no idea if it will happen. So hopefully some stills, maybe a clip if we're very lucky. It's all happening quite quick.
It is.
And in terms of a release date, those 2 words I never wanted to hear again in my life after going through season 3. Honestly, that was bad, wasn't it? Waiting for the bloody release date.
Oh my God, I know.
You can't go on season 3 because the strikes massively impacted things.
They really did. And we're still seeing the impact.
And so what I'll say is the Netflix schedule is looking very busy for 2025.
Yeah.
So I wonder if, even if theoretically the show could be finished and edited and everything by the end of the year, I wonder if they're going to keep it for next year.
I think that's very likely that they're going to keep it for next year. All the reporting I've read too is everyone saying 2026. And that's not from the Bridgerton team. That's just entertainment people being like, oh, we'll probably see it in 2026. So,
and that might sound like a long way away,
but it'll be there in a blink of an eye.
Time passes. It's the inevitability of life. Well, Beans, what a journey it continues to be, eh? I'm just watching Beans laying down on her floor with her feet in the air. If that's a visual that you need. Beans, thank you for joining me today. A little bit of a casual episode just to sort of scoop up the crumbs.
I know.
You know what? I had a whole episode that I was going to pitch to you for Valentine's Day, like a Valentine's special. And then this has happened now. So,
oh my goodness.
We'll be doing this instead. C'est la vie. We will be covering everything that happens on Valentine's Day.
Yes.
It might not be as quick as it was last year because that nearly killed us.
Yeah.
But you will hear all of our thoughts in due course, eh? Well, Beans, until that moment, until Valentine's Day. No, until our 303 part 2. That's what's next.
Yeah.
We've still got balloons to go. Yeah, until Bloomgate, where can everyone find us?
Oh, okay. You can find us at What a Barb Pod on Instagram and on TikTok.
Yeah.
If you want to, I guess. And then you can find us over on YouTube at What a Barb Pod.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, cool. Got it. You guys, it's been a while. It's been a while. You can get us on all podcast platforms, however you feel, Apple, Spotify, whatever. And lastly, if you would like, you can go follow us over on Patreon. Also, I think at What a Barb Pod.
If you want to know Beans' top 5 birds, the content's there, guys.
Oh, yes. Yeah. They edited a really hilarious little episode of me talking about my favorite birds that I tolerate. Let's just say that real quick, that I tolerate because I'm not a fan of birds, although I do make a distinction between birds and bird owners.
Well, you're giving spoilers. You're giving spoilers, babe.
I didn't give too many spoilers. I just said the distinction between birds and bird owners. But if you would like to hear that distinction and more about my thoughts on birds and other things,
and Polin.
and Polin, you can go and follow us on Patreon.
But until then, Beans, I don't know what you're going to sing. Do us the honour and sing us out.
Oh gosh, I didn't even think about this.
Well, it can't be Seasons of Love from Rent.
No, that's so tragic.
525,600
man house. The song that I'm going to sing you guys out to tonight is Wise Men Say Only Fools Rush In, but I can't help falling in love with beans. That's violin. Do 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 do. Do 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 do.